The program will be having youth and employment. First day, that was on 10th Monday, was youth and entrepreneurship. And now the last session of the series will be on youth responsive policies and governance, which should be on Friday. So with that said, I'll introduce our guest for today. The first guest is Dr. Churchill Saoke. He is the Director, Alumni International Students Association in JCOT. He is a PhD holder in physics with a focus on wind energy engineering. He has a master's in physics, Master of Arts in Diplomacy and International Relations, and is the founder and director, Peace and Unity International, that focuses on programs for young people to develop their leadership potential, as well as other programs that help promote peace among communities. He's the author of a book, The Cry of Nations, Reflections in Desire of a Peaceful and Prosperous Future Generation. And he's also a fellow of the Mandela Washington Fellowship, which is a flagship of the former president of the US, Barack Obama's initiative to support our young people in Africa. The second guest for today will be Dr. Were Dennis, who is the chief editor for Ryculture, Health and Social Innovation and Planet Wizard Africa. He is a pharmacist and a health advocate and a writer. And most of all, he is a teacher. He teaches what he knows and hopes that the information that he shares with people impacts lives. So I'll give you both a minute each or two to introduce yourself, then we move into the discussion bit. So I'll start with you, Churchill. You're muted.
Yeah. Great. So you can hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
I think thanks, David, for having me here. It's really great. This is quite interesting to discuss some of these issues that are affecting young people. And I think you have done the introduction more than necessary and more than enough. So I might not really want to add anything. The only thing is that, well, I really exited as director for Alumni and International Students in JKUR. So I'm no longer the director there. So maybe that one is, that's the only thing that I might want to edit from there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Dennis, where?
Good evening.
Good evening to you.
Most of the details you got are quite accurate. I know we have been in school for 6 years, so with David, so I wasn't expecting him to miss any details. So as he said, I'm a teacher, I'm a writer, I'm also a pharmacist like him. And we, as Ryculture and also as Planet Wizard, we are very huge about mentorship, guiding the youth, giving them the information and the wisdom that we have gotten. We want to see people live better. As he has always said, Ryculture is about changing culture. And you change culture from bad to good, basically. So we are really excited to do such projects. And thank you, David. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So in line with our sub-theme for today, youth and employment. As a common narrative, we all hear about unemployment among the young people, and especially this is a population that accounts for over 35% of the Kenyan population. That's over 16 million people. So what do you feel? Is it a major challenge as it is? And what would be the contributing factors? I would start with you, Churchill, just as an introduction to the main concern on how we can tackle these issues.
Well, thanks, David. The youth constitute a big percentage of the population, not just in Kenya, but even in Africa. Yeah. We have over 40%. The young people are over 40% of the labor force.
Yeah.
And ironically, it still constitutes close to about 60% of the total unemployment. And so the youth are that being so, they're very productive. Some are very creative, like what you guys are doing, and there are challenges that they face, some of which are structural, some of which are personality based, and some of which are because of their understanding of systems. So when you look at the challenges, some are based on finance, lack of finance assets in terms of political stability. Young people are engaged in their pounds of political instability. The young people they lack technical skills, some lack soft skills, and most of which is because of low investments in young people. And this low investment has resulted into quite a number of things that now end up making them vulnerable to some of the things that I have spoken there. And I think that the as we go, we shall look at some of the multi-prong things that are making some of these challenges of young people come into play, and how maybe they can be solved at individual level, and specifically building onto the soft skill to make the young people be better for the job market.
Okay. Thank you for that. Where do you have anything to add on this one?
On the unemployment issue, I take the perspective that times have changed, and unfortunately, our preparedness has not been enough to accommodate the changing times. In the times of our grandfathers and our fathers, getting an education was enough to guarantee a job. They used to tell us that they would get employed when they're in Form 2. And the employers would come looking for them. Right now, people have PhDs and no one is interested. It's really not anyone's fault, I think. It is just how times change as we live on this planet. And we can look at other economies to see how they have coped. But for me, I see that we need to, like I said, we need to invest more on the youth and how they are going to think about how they're going to live their lives. Because someone had thought about people getting into school and then after that getting into jobs, but no one thought about what if everyone goes to school and there are not enough jobs anymore, or what if the education system no longer matches the job market. No one has sat down and thought about that. So for me, I see it as a process of time changing, and we need to start thinking about how we can adapt to time. It's not a bad thing that times change, but we really need to think about how we can live with the current times.
Yeah. Thank you for that contribution. And actually that brings perspective on some issue that has been in the society for so long, especially for depending on the faculty that you pursue a course in. There was that kind of belief that when you get into campus, you get into particular programs, you have a guaranteed job. And now in the current state, you even hear of doctors not getting jobs, like everybody is tarmacking the same way. So how do we address such kind of anomalies that are in the system? Because we are using the previous mentality that once you go into school, you get into campus, there's a guarantee that you'll get a better livelihood out of a good job. So how do we address such kind of a thing?
Well, David,
yes.
First we really have to begin to think, and young people must begin to know that we don't necessarily go to school to get a job.
Yeah.
And this has always been my thesis. We do not necessarily go to school to get jobs.
Yeah.
We go to school to go great knowledge and skills to open our minds to expand opportunities that will end up creating jobs. And I think that this is what the education system must begin to look at. Because the jobs that we want to go to school to get have been created by people.
Yes.
I will tell you, for example, that and these jobs, they have been created by people, and the people who have created them have used the basic theoretical concepts that they get from the universities and from the colleges to come up with the products, to come up with processes that end up creating jobs locally and globally. And so we therefore must really begin to rethink the whole question of employment of young people, from just the blue collar jobs and going to school to look for jobs, to going to school to create jobs. I want to give you an example. You know, we had a discussion recently with one of my colleagues about, you know, there was a video that was doing round about someone who I'm sure you guys must have seen it, of a gentleman who was complaining about the education system. You guys must have seen it. It was trending a lot. He was complaining about the education system and how the British education system was aimed at, you know, making us not think and things of that sort. And, you know, I asked one question about that. We are 55 years and over 60 years after independence, we still blame the British. There's something wrong with our heads. Why haven't we changed it? The British are not here to influence our education system. We got the power to change it. When, for example, you travel outside, if you have a chance to travel in some of the developed economies, and you look at some of the projects that the students there are doing, and the projects that end up getting into products in our market and we buy as technology, they are basic, they're products that are made from basic concepts of science. Basic concepts of science. If you open, for example, if you happen to open any of the products that have been bought from Japan or from China or from Europe or from America, be it even some of these things that we use in the communities for solar panels and these energy technologies, if you open those products, you will realize that the technologies those people are using are exactly, some of them are exactly the technologies, the theories that we teach, that are taught in class. And so the question of us and the question of people, of employment, is a conceptualization problem that we really must make young people rethink about. You go to school as an engineer, not to go and get employed in a bank. You go to school as an engineer to find ways of thinking of how to create new products that can go into the market to create new jobs. And that is why you look at coronavirus, it has come into Africa. We are thinking of how to buy PPEs and how to buy these things, and, you know, and we are not realizing that the core of innovation, the core of innovation and the core of economic progress lies in the innovation of science and technology.
Thank you so much for that. Actually, that makes critical sense, because you look at it, we've been made to believe that schooling is going to get you a job. Without the productivity, what comes out of that education? And that mindset shift needs to be in place. So how do we drive for that kind of a mindset shift from your end, Dennis?
Looking at the education system, there's been an overemphasis on passing exams. I think you all know that. And fueled by competition and ranking. Someone is number one, someone is number two. So people get that feeling of achievement. And unfortunately, you can't put number one on the table and eat it. It is an achievement that remains on paper. So for me, I think that right from high school, we could even do it from primary, there needs to be a shift in how education is perceived. Not merely a thing for exams, but a way of people to solve problems. Something else is that talent has been underutilized in this country. Look at education. You don't expect everyone to score 100%. And unfortunately, the education system has robbed people of their self-esteem, because if you don't score 100%, you believe you're stupid and you'll not succeed in this life. That is sometimes actually what happens. And if a child is robbed of their self-esteem right from primary school to high school, they'll believe that they'll never be good for anything. How will they be able to discover their talents? How will they be able to utilize it? Because we are looking into an economy where there's an article I wrote about entrepreneurship where I was saying that people don't pay you simply because you have gone to school or simply because you have a degree. People pay you because you're solving their problems. If you look at the case in Nairobi right now, we have people who own a car wash, for example. They're making more money than degree holders who have gone for the white collar jobs in the office, because the economy is such a way that people want to be paid. People want to pay you when you solve a certain problem. But in high school and in campus, this has not really been communicated. People just want to, the only problem they're thinking is solving the theoretical. So I agree with Dr. Saoke that there's a lot of theory that is being taught and it is good, but there is no application. I think the closest thing we have in high school is science congress, which is not taken as seriously as it should be. That is one way of people actually looking at how they can solve problems. So for me, I think apart from just the education system, we need to really look into how talents are being utilized. You realize that even for, personally, I think that education is a talent on its own because it follows a normal curve, just like any other talent. If you look at athletics, the top performers are few. It's a normal curve. Education is the same thing. Not everyone can excel in it. The same thing with all the other talents, be it cooking, singing, and it's not just the mainstream. But I believe if the people can start to think in terms of which problem does someone have and how can I solve this problem for them in an excellent manner, then you start looking at job creation opportunities.
So that is a very critical thing. We're looking at it in terms of solving problems, creating value in the systems where you are. And from Dr. Saoke, you mentioned the aspect on most of the innovation comes in this application of science and the technology for innovative ideas that are coming in. And where I mentioned and component where like for high schools, we have the science congresses where young people come up with creative ideas. They dream of things probably they've never seen in their lives. But at the end of the day, they have that vision, that kind of a future that they want to create through that dream. But how does that translation come into place? Because most of them you find, for example, when you're talking about developed economies, this is a system where these people have ideas. They're given a platform, an ecosystem where these ideas can be nurtured. And once they are nurtured, they are now contributing and building that economy. In our context, that is not something that is taking root as much. So how do we bridge that kind of a gap? And what are the kind of shortfalls that you feel are in the system?
You got it right. There are three things that, I like what Dr. Were has spoken about.
Yeah.
The core of business and the core of any entrepreneurship, am I clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is embedding it on the problems and the challenges of people. Very important, and I like that statement. When you look at most of the businesses and most of the entrepreneurial ventures that have succeeded around the world, they have always been embedded into the problems and the challenges that people face. Innovations that have been able to transcend and create transforming changes in our societies are always those that have solved humanity's problems. And so in making this happen, there are two approaches. One, there is need for the students and the young people to create a mechanism with which they come down from the elitism and the theory in school to understand the challenges that people face.
Yes.
When I teach physics, I will tell my students that Ohm's law is V is equals to IR. And tell them that this Ohm's law V equals to IR, you can be able to use this to create a knife that can be able to cut rubber.
Yes.
Because you just need to create electrical activity that makes the wire hot.
We are losing you.
For that to happen, the student must understand what the people are facing. They must be able to understand that the people need a knife that is able to cut rubber. How do they get to know that? They must be able to find platforms where they engage with the people outside just of class. And I tell my students that you got to be able to participate in extracurricular activities. Because when you participate in extracurricular activities, you get to know and understand the realities of the things that are happening beyond and out of class. That is one. And two, you get to learn things about yourself that you could not learn in class. And when you're talking about the skills that you learn when you're looking at the holistic education that Dennis has talked about, holistic education constitutes two very important aspects: the technical skills, which you learn in class, and the core skills, which you will hardly learn in class. When you have these two sets of skills, then you end up being employable. So it means that for you to be in a position where you have both the technical and the core skills, you then must be able to get beyond class so that you can understand the realities of what is happening outside. And the colleges and institutions, for example, when you find yourself into societies and clubs like the ones that you had established, those are where young people can be able to know themselves. They can be able to learn the skills of collaboration, the skills of teamwork, the skills of communication, the skills of leadership. You cannot learn that in class. Yet they are very important elements that constitutes employability. That is the first component. The second component that will ensure that the young people are able to get into a system where they're able to understand what is happening is, and this is now not on the student side, this is more of a policy issue. There is need to create an entrepreneurial ecosystem that is able to provide a support framework for young people and their creativity. The moment you have an entrepreneurial ecosystem that is able to support young people's ideas and creativity, then you will find them seeing value in thinking of new ideas, thinking of projects that can generate, that can be able to, projects that can generate income, projects that can turn into products. And this is now where the developed world has been able to do so well. A student comes up with a good project, there is a very good support entrepreneurial ecosystem that supports that student from the point of incubation all through to the point where that product is commercialized and it gets into the market and goes into a foreign country and brings export back to the country.
Yeah. Those are very critical things. One, young people having to overcome the elitism. You have to know that you have to get into contact with the reality on the ground and know the problems that people are facing. One, beyond that, you need to be exposed beyond class. Get to learn and integrate with other people and see what value you can get from that system, developing the core skills. And beyond that, there's the policy issue. And based on that, we have a system where most of the times, the two first points that you mentioned are not taken up as much by the young people in terms of overcoming elitism. When you're in the university, you are the elite in the society, you're among the top cream of the society. So most of the responsibility, we push it on the government. And that is a very challenging bit. And then when you now move to the issues of the structural changes, the policy and the frameworks on creating an ecosystem that enables young people to grow, what would be your take in terms of that? And even now for the aspect now we have the CBC, competency-based curriculum that is coming on board. What would be the integration between the policies and the frameworks that we need to foster such kind of a creative and entrepreneurial ecosystem? And beyond that, now we integrate it with the education curriculum that's now being launched. Maybe whether you could give your contribution, or maybe Saoke, whichever works for you.
I'd just like to mention that there's something Dr. Saoke has said. We had agreed that at the core of every entrepreneurial venture is a problem that needs to be solved, but he has also said that you can't solve problems that you don't know. You need to go out there and talk to people. So that is where people need the soft skills. For example, how do you start a conversation with someone? How do you interact with people? And this is something that unfortunately has also been fueled down or has been degraded by the spirit of competition. I believe, Dr. David, you saw this in campus, where people are still struggling to get A-plane and compare results to see who has scored more than the other. And that spirit of competition really robs people of the environment where people can interact and share ideas and share problems. Someone can tell you, at my home, we are facing this problem. And maybe back at your home, you have the solution. You tell him, we did this and this. Can we do it at your home or in your village and see if it will work for you? Because people are from different backgrounds, and so people have different experiences and ideas which could help others solve their own problems.
Yeah.
So it is a very important point that people need to interact so that they can actually, from there, they can build and see where they can get the entrepreneurial ideas and how to actualize them. On the point of the policies, it is true that we need the political goodwill from the government, so that if somebody has come up with an idea, for example, a student, I like to use that example, a student in high school or campus has a science project, there needs to be a framework where he can, let's say, it can be made simple. He can go to a certain organization, present that idea. The idea is assessed by experts in the field, and they help him to actualize this idea and actually make money out of it. But you realize we are not yet in that system. We have not reached there. So we need to improvise with what we have at the moment. So as we wait even for the competence-based curriculum to start being actualized, I know it might take a while, it's something new. The youth need to be taught on also how to think when they're innovating. It is one thing to think of a big project that will cost billions of dollars to actualize. That is not a bad idea. It is a good thing. But the reality is that attracting investors has never been easy. You might have to start small. And then you ask a youth, even just a random question, maybe not really related to this topic, which kind of car would you like to drive? Which kind of laptop would you like to have? Which kind of house would you like to have? They have big dreams, big dreams. I'm going to tell you, I want a MacBook, I want a Mercedes, I want a multi-story building, and that is okay. But it goes back to the point of being too idealistic, too theoretical in how we think. The reality is that you will not start with the Mercedes, you will not start with the MacBook or the multi-story building. They'll have to start somewhere and build slowly. So even how our youth think currently, because we cannot sit back and wait for the policies to be built while people are, in a limbo. People are wondering, where can I get employment? I need food. Some of them have families, and yet the money is not yet coming in. People need to be trained on how to think so that they can start small. They can, and therefore build from it. If someone wants to start a hotel, can they start with that street kiosk and build from there? Sometimes that big dream is what stops people from starting, because all they're thinking of is, I have this idea, I need investors, and they're not moving. So for me, I think people also need to be trained on how to think. It might seem like something very obvious, but in our current situation, we need to do something. We need to improvise if we are going to start helping people immediately. While we wait for the policies to be favorable, and I think the private sector can really help in this area by investing in the youth as well, so that the government is not left alone on it. We need to train the youth on how to think so that they can take advantage of the situation as it is, while we wait for the policies to improve.
Thank you so much for that. Churchill, just at least on terms of the policy and the guidelines that we need in place to ensure that these processes are being driven, how could young people be engaged in the same process and ensure that these policies that are creating an innovative ecosystem are in place, that's one. And two, that they are responding, they're addressing the needs that we have for the young people in the context of entrepreneurship, employment, and your.
First we must begin by understanding that we need to instill in young people, and the young people need to have in the minds what is called an entrepreneurial mindset. An entrepreneurial mindset is something that is extremely noble and it's extremely important. It's the ability of an individual to think not just of business, but to think creatively, to create new ways of doing things. It could be new ways of doing business. It could be new ways of doing processes. It could be new processes. It could be even just new products and things like that. So we need to find a mechanism of instilling entrepreneurial mindset amongst young people. And in creating entrepreneurial mindset, we need to make the young people know that some of these things are not rocket science. They are very basic thinking. They require very basic thinking. They do not require you to know Schrödinger. They do not require you to know the Schrödinger equation is very important because it makes you to critically think and analyze issues. But the challenges that people face are not necessarily Schrödinger-like. We just need to think very simple and use our critical minds to have an entrepreneurial mind that can be able to create new ways of doing things and products. That is one. And two, the CBC, for me, I think that we might never necessarily achieve so much with it if we are not careful. And I once had a discussion of this on national television about the implementation, curriculum-based, the competency-based curriculum. Because the thing that it seeks to solve, it may not necessarily solve because of the kind of environment where we are. Not unless we reach a point where we tell every young person who is born and who is going to school that you are not going to school to get a job, you are going to school to solve the problems of our society. Until we reach that point, and until we reach a point where the government's investments in education and in industrialization is geared towards supporting, creating a support framework for those who are able to think and those who are able to innovate, we will never achieve so much with CBC. In fact, it will create more chaos. Because in as long as we still have the mindset that we go to school to get education, to get a job, we will still have more people going out and few jobs in the market. Whether it is through CBC or whether it is through 844.
Thank you
so if the CBC cannot create more jobs, we are doing absolutely nothing. Remember, the CBC came because the employers were claiming that the students, the graduates who are coming from our colleges and campuses are too theoretical. They do not have basic skills. And the question is, why couldn't we just find ways of embedding skills acquisition in the current system? I mean, if students do not have soft skills like collaboration and teamwork and communication and all that, why couldn't we find mechanisms of embedding that within the system? And I have seen students whom I have been able to mentor, to acquire soft skills, what they can be able to do well in class and to do well outside of class. So these are things that for me, I find that we are going a very long direction to solve very basic and very small things. In the long run, we will invest so much and come back to the very problems where we began, if you're not careful. Because what we need is young people to have entrepreneurial mindset. That when you are leaving campus, you're finishing campus like you guys finished and have started Ryculture, a social venture. Imagine if every young person who was coming out of campus was able to think of a social venture. Do you think, or social venture or any other venture, do you think we will be worried about employment? Do you think we will be talking about employability?
No.
We will actually be worried and talking of how to get employees from Tanzania and Uganda and other parts of the world, because we have so much, but we have so much employment opportunities, but we don't have people, because everybody is seeking to expand the pie.
That's a very critical bit, because when you look at it, as you started with, we have a system where we are looking for jobs which should be already existent. But when you look at the initial education system, it was structured to create jobs that were needed at that point in time. In the current space, we have
Exactly.
an education that doesn't create new jobs for the coming skills. So we have redundant jobs, or we have organizations that have been in existence, but there's nobody going to take up a job that is already occupied. Job opportunities are not opening up as much as possible. And probably it's because of the mindset shift that you're talking about. Most of us, we are focused on getting jobs instead of using the skills and entrepreneurial mindset and applying it in a particular organization. One thing that I've also realized in this point is when you talk about entrepreneurship, there are some of us who are in this platform would be thinking of it in terms of, when you talk about entrepreneurship, I have to start my business. There are concepts on entrepreneurship. So how could we use such kind of innovative ideas and culture, create it in a way that maybe, for example, not maybe, majority of young people don't have the resources, but some have the ideas. So how do we put it in a place that, you have an idea for those who have the entrepreneurial mindset, and integrate it into a system where you are now able to contribute and create employment opportunity for you in an organization. And other than that, you're even creating more employment opportunities. For example, if you have an innovative idea that's going to produce a product, that's already opening up this pie, creating more opportunities. How do we look at such kind of models where people can create value and grow? Yes,
So,
you're wearing.
So the models, when I'm in my organization,
yes,
and I'm employing someone, I'm looking at somebody who is capable of delivering.
Yeah.
Someone who is capable of building up my organization and making my organization achieve its vision and its mission.
Yeah.
And in doing so, therefore, I'll be very keen on someone who can be able to see things as they are now, and ask the tough questions. How about if we did it this way? What will be the outcome? How about if we tried this way? What will be the outcome? And so the entrepreneurship, what you call internal entrepreneurship, can be an entrepreneurship where you just are able to use your critical mind and creative mind to reorganize things within an existing setup, to change, to ensure that you improve efficiency of operation and increase productivity of an organization or a company. In doing so, you end up being very productive to that company because of your entrepreneurial mindset. And you become very fruitful and very productive for that company because of that mindset. So then you realize that as a result of that, you end up having influence wherever you are because of your capacity to produce and reproduce. You use the skills you have to produce and reproduce at minimum cost and expenditure. That then makes you be a very noble person for every employer. Any employer, it makes you to be very noble. And it then makes you to be able to even grow very fast up in the ladder. Some people, they are capable of using these through the core skills that they have. They just have the ability to communicate. When you give them an opportunity to communicate an idea and pitch an idea to investors, people grab it because of that capacity. To others, they have the ability to collaborate and work with people and teamwork. You give them an idea and a task, they can be able to engage with 5, 4, 7, 10, 100 people and produce the results that their bosses and their company need more than even what they want. To others, they are just able to rethink of how to reorganize things through their critical minds and what we call the high order thinking, and create a new way of doing things that bring better results. So these are soft skills, but to even others, they have the technical skills that they have learned in class. You give them an engine and they're able to reproduce that engine in a much more efficient way. And because of that, the company likes them and they become very indispensable. You give them a program and they're able to redesign the program to code the program in a much better way that the company needs. So that whole thing, therefore, if you end up having a person who has those special things, you then realize that your star is really able to shine. So it is the responsibility of any particular person and any particular young person and any particular student to realize at a personal level, what is your star? What is it that will make your star to shine? What is it that when you do, people get wowed and get so excited about, and they just want to see you up there. When it is time for doing this, they just want to see David doing it and no any other person. So these are things that young people must at personal level begin to think, because before we even talk about policy level, before we even talk about the education system, before we even talk about the CBCs and all this government policy, we must have our young people change at a personal level. We got to get through personal discoveries and discover ourselves in the most special way to understand ourselves, who we are, what are we passionate for, what is it that we can be able to do, what can we deliver to our world in the most special way, and deliver it. In the process of doing that, you begin to discover yourself, and the skills of achieving that, you discover it as you continue on and on and on. And continually, you build it beyond yourself. It gets, you shine at personal level, you get into group, you shine at the group level, you get into an organization where you are, you shine in that organization, you go beyond, and you continually end up realizing that you shine all the way. And that's why you'll always realize that even the people you are with in campus or the people you are with in high school, you will realize that today when you see one person you see him in the media or you see him somewhere, you will always reflect back and say, that fellow, I remember him, he used to be very good in physics, or he used to be very good in history. Is it not true? So these are things that, they have a huge influence in what we do, and that personal discovery is extremely, extremely important.
Thank you so much for that. Where?
On the matters of, I like how Dr. Saoke has broken it down into very small bits that, seem insignificant, but it is good. It is true. For example, in class, there was somebody who was good at taking notes. There was somebody who was good at presenting an assignment. There was just somebody who was good at doing the exams. Seemingly small skills, which people can easily overlook, but those are the skills that set them apart. And I can recommend the talks by Jackson Sayer on talent discovery. Sometimes talent is not something so big or so mainstream, whether you are an athlete, a footballer, a musician. Sometimes it is the tiny things which we overlook. Right now, we have people who simply because they can talk a lot, they're making a lot of money on radio, simply because they can talk a lot and they can make people laugh. Something as tiny as that, or as insignificant as people want to call it. So I can recommend the talks by Jackson Sire so that people can start to think of what is my talent and what is a talent, first of all, and what is my talent and how can I actualize it. He has also mentioned about, I think in the language of my grandmother, there's a saying that goes, Dano Mwandu. That means the real wealth is in people, the real wealth or property. And when you talk about that, I was looking at the example of Dr. Saoke, whereby someone is good at something, another one is good at something. If they are going to make an engine, someone is good at designing, another one is good at, making the actual engine, the crafting process. Maybe someone is good at selling the engine. But what we need is collaboration from all these people. So sometimes for an innovation to succeed, you don't go alone. You need to reach out to people and to harness the skills that they have so that together you can succeed. It is an example of what we have done at Ryculture. It has not been a one-man show. Someone has been good at something and done it, another one has been good at something else and done it. So sometimes collaboration is what makes an idea to be fruitful or to come into existence. Something else in terms of when you talk about policy, I'm a believer in research. So even as we think about how policies can be made and how they can be made to suit the needs of the country, a lot of research needs to be done so that you can understand our local environment and how these policies are going to be actualized to benefit the youth. Because without research, we'll be doing again back to theoretical, maybe applying what has worked for Japan or what has worked for US, and maybe it is not suitable for our economy. So I believe research can really take us to the next level when it comes to policy making.
Thank you so much for that. And from that presentation, what the key issues that we need to pick up is, one, you have to identify your star, the particular skill that sets you apart, that whether in your personal scope, in a group setting, in an organizational setting, that would be the extra unique value proposition that you bring into the team. The thing that makes you tick at that particular point, it has to be something that you're passionate about, something that you excel in. And then with that, you now need to master the soft skills, the core skills, as Dr. Saoke mentions them, so that these are going to enable you relate with people, interpersonal relations. And when you use that, you can collaborate in a setting, you can be able to create that value. And when you're creating it, you need to look at it not only in a context of you driving the agenda. It's a matter of you being part of a system, driving a systemic change, a systemic process, whether it's in employment, entrepreneurship, it's a matter of driving that common change. And that is a very important bit. And then now Dennis brought in a new factor, a new concept in terms of doing research that is going to guide the policies and the frameworks that are in place. In this context where we're talking about youth and unemployment, or employment as it is, we realize that everybody is talking about unemployment, but when we get down to the basics, not much research is being done in terms of why don't we have more employment opportunities. We know there are no more jobs that are being created. We are not entrepreneurial enough, but is there research in it? And how do we relate that kind of research into the actual implementation, the actual policy that is being produced, so that that policy influences the creation of new ideas, and the creation of new ideas opens up entrepreneurial ecosystems that it's kind of a self-fulfilling cycle. So maybe as a policy analyst, you could give us some insights on that, Saoke.
Sorry, come again?
You could give us some insight in terms of, we're looking at research informing policy, and that research informing policy will give us interventions on how we can respond better. For example, on issues on youth unemployment, entrepreneurial mindset, entrepreneurial ecosystem that's going to fuel these. We know we don't have much of jobs being created, but at the same time, we are not looking at the job not being there is as a result of not having a creative mindset. So how can we do that research to relate the creativity, the problem-solving mindset into informing policies, and these policies and the creativity that is being nurtured establishes an entrepreneurial ecosystem that enables us to thrive and get the jobs that we need as young people?
Well, you know, there are two ways of doing it. One is the top-down approach, and the other one is the bottom-up approach.
Yeah.
The bottom-up approach would involve that you develop, you influence policy from the research-based policy using research-based data, where you go down into research and do the research and come up with the status reports and policy reviews and develop policy documents or draft policy documents, and use those draft policy documents to advance or advocate for certain causes or certain changes in the education sector. So that might mean that you might need to find mechanisms of engaging with like-minded organizations, or beginning to find ways of entrenching yourself within the government institutions to advance and advocate for certain policy positions. So the idea is that you've gone into research and you've come up with specific findings, and you have where you think that what you need to advance. Then once you get to know what you need to advance, you need to find ways of advancing it within government, because it is government that influences, or that not necessarily influences, but that develops the policies and implements the policy. So the entry point could be through advocacy, use it through engaging with other like-minded organizations, or it could be entry point through legislative arm, where you advance certain causes through the entry into the legislature, that is parliament or something like that. Or the other alternative is using them to, instead of going at the national scale, cascading some of those findings and advancing or advocating them segmentedly as per specific institutions. So for example, if you've done a research that is focusing on institutions of higher learning, and you know that it might be on a bigger scope to advance the change of course within the national level, then you cascade it to institutions and ask yourself, what is it that we can be able to change in an institution like JKUAT? And how do we advance it? Do we advance it through the student union? Do we advance it through the clubs and societies? Do we advance it through the deans and the chairpersons of departments? So you must be able to understand what is the entry point of embedding the policy within the systems for discussions. Because if that is not done, we will always complain. Yeah. The proposals must be entrenched within the channels of decision making, because it is when proposals can be discussed in administrative organs of decision making, then you head towards bringing change. That is one. The other one is the top bottom approach, where you are looking at what has been, a number of the things that we are discussing here, by the way, they already exist somewhere. Yeah. within government libraries. And you will find that policy papers have been done and they exist somewhere, but they are always withdrawn, or they are always drawn out when it best serves political interest at a given time. Yeah. So then it therefore means that as an advocacy group, it might be necessary for you as part of that research to retrieve and review documents that are related with what your interests are, and advance it at that upper level to make it something that is necessary, worth doing at that particular time. So you create it, you make it be a political hot issue that is necessary to be done and necessary to be implemented. If that so happens, then such kind of policies are or policy papers are retrieved, and when they are retrieved, you find them implemented. So those are two ways in which you can be able to use research, and that is how research is actually used to influence policy, either doing the research and coming up with the data and recommendations and using it to influence decision on top, or getting decisions that have been made somewhere on top but they are not implemented, and creating action, reactivating them so that they become issues of national interest or issues of institutional interest for them to be implemented at that particular time.
Thank you so much for that. And those are very critical issues. Even in talking about employment, when you do that kind of research, because you have to, let's say for the people who are here, you'd be interested in creating employment opportunities, and you realize there's a gap in terms of the research that is done in this issue and how it can be addressed. That can be an avenue for you to start doing research on it, engage with different organizations and institutions, as Churchill mentioned. Once you're part of that system, you're creating an employment opportunity for you, and you're driving an agenda that's creating more avenues to improve on the current status quo that we don't like as much. That's the process. Then you can start in the top-down approach as well and create that mechanism in place. So the last question, as before we go into the Q&A session, I'm going to ask the both of you, how does an individual in the current space where we feel like there's no employment opportunity are limited, how do we build the skills, especially the core skills that you have mentioned, and which opportunities do exist for such people who are interested in building the skills in themselves and getting opportunities where they can find the star in themselves? Because once you've discovered yourself, you are able to apply the skills that you have. Maybe just a contribution on that, on how we can make that specific at a personal level. Probably the systemic ones need to happen, but we are not in control of them at a personal level, but we could have an influence in it. So how do we start from the basics on skills development, the core skills, and the opportunities that exist in that space, so that we'll be suited for the employment opportunities where they are, or we'll be able to create the employment opportunities? So I'll start with you, Dennis.
So sometimes, going back to, we had this thing called mathematical tools that were checked once the holiday was over. You couldn't get through the gate if you didn't have your calculator, your maths tables, and a mathematical set. If you didn't have those, you received your due punishment, and you were told to go back home and come back with these things. I wish the same could be said of our talents. You know, it has been a long-running joke when someone is asked what is your talent and they say sleeping, eating. It has been a long-running, which frankly it is killing this generation. I wish the deputy would stand at the gate, and if you didn't know your talent, you'd be given a thrashing and told to go back home and think about your talent. When you have a proper answer, you come back, because we have reached a point where our talent is a life and death matter. It is through your talent that you are going to solve a certain problem, and solve it in such an excellent manner that someone is going to be willing to pay for such services. We have just a simple example. Maybe you know how to cook chapati, and your neighbor there does not fancy such a work. And maybe one day they come and taste your chapati and say, hey, can you cook for me chapati for the whole of next week? I will buy the resources, the unga, everything, and I will pay you for the labor. You know, something as simple as that. And that is actually what you're good at. So I would still recommend looking at How to Discover Your Talent by Jackson Sire. And from there you can build, it's something like a 20-minute talk on YouTube. You can build and see, what am I actually good at? What keeps me awake at night that I'm so perturbed by, I would like to change? And how can I actualize it? And on terms of actualization, I'll take on our example that you won't be able to do this alone. You need to know how to make good friendships, not friends who are just interested in seeing the latest single released by which celeb and who is dating who in the celebrity circle, but friends who are thinking of innovation. Which business can they do? What are they doing? Friends who will encourage you also, as you think, to think about how can I start making money even before school is over, after school. So we need to find good people who we can collaborate with to make our ideas a success, because as we have established, we cannot really wait on the government to do everything for us. It harks back to that mindset of high school where you wait for exams to come, you do them, you pass. It is a situation where we need to start solving our own problems by ourselves and do not wait for someone to solve them for us. I believe that is part of independence and part of being an adult.
Thank you so much for that. Dr. Churchill?
Okay. A few things. I like what Dr. Ravere has spoken about cycle. Your circle is extremely important. You will never grow beyond the people around you. And the people around you determine how far you can be able to grow. So it's extremely important to look at the kind of circle that you got at any given time, because they can either cap your growth or give you wings to fly. So the things I wanted to speak, one is, and it's also one is mentorship. Mentorship is very important because mentorship is able to make you know the things that you will not have known at any given. Each one of us, we are in the process of growing, and as we grow, you learn new things, and you rather learn from what somebody has learned before in advance, because that is the best process of growth. So mentorship is extremely important as part of personal development. The other one is just spending time, as Dennis said, to learn from skill development programs. Skill development programs that exist that are able to make you to just get to learn how to acquire some of these things and how to discover yourself and do things like that. And I have seen the power of skill development programs. I used to run, and I've been running one of the programs on technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship program, which was to help build, help in building an entrepreneurship mindset amongst young people, and the power of what that has done to some of the serious participants. So some of these skill development programs are extremely important to participate in. The other one is engagement in forums and clubs and societies. These are areas where that can be able to help you to know yourself and understand yourself better. Sometimes we think that we know ourselves, but we actually really don't know ourselves. It is until, and if you want to know that, you don't believe that you can jump from 6th floor until the building begins to fall. Then is when you realize that you can actually jump from 6th floor. So in other words, we tend to, when we sit on our comfort zones, we really do not know ourselves. But when we get ourselves into some of these forums and some of these clubs and some of these societies, we put ourselves in positions where we are able to stretch out ourselves to know the best of who we are. The other one is building out from your passion. There's nothing huge as passion. There is nothing strong as passion. When you are passionate about something and you do something with the passion, you do it like you're mad. Someone once said that passion, there is a very thin line between passion and madness. Sometimes you can do something, to some people you are mad, but to yourself you are so okay because of passion. So if there was anything that I would wish that young people understood and came back to the realization, is the understanding of what they are passionate for. Because when you know what you're passionate for, what you can be able to die for, then you will give it your best. The last thing is just looking at yourself in the context of leadership. Looking at yourself in the context of leadership, in the broader scope of leadership. Where do you belong? in the broader scope of leadership? What is it that you want to contribute into the broader concept of our world? Do you want to become a human being that came and existed and just passed on after 80 or 90 years without saw nothing? What is it that you want to provide to our society and to our world in terms of leadership? And when I look at leadership, I'm looking at people who are able to bring changes into our society through their minds and their skills and their innovation. So those are some of the things that, for me, I think that maybe if you look at, you could be able to find, you could be able actually to build your skills. If you engage in these societies, you will learn more about yourself. You engage in skill development, you will learn a lot of things. Mentorship, you'll be able to learn, and just discovering yourself and seeking passion, what you're passionate for, and looking at yourself from the context of leadership.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Churchill. There are 5 critical things: mentorship, skills development programs, engagement in different forums, exposing you to what you really are capable of, deriving out of your passion, and then finally you look at yourself in the context of leadership and determining what you want to be in the end of the existence of this world. Those are very critical. So anyone who has a question, you can raise up your hand. I'll give you a moment to speak, and if you're not in a position to speak, you can just type on the chat box. So I have a question, a follow-up question to you, Churchill, on the aspect of mentorship. This is a question that a friend of mine asked. She is passionate about patient safety in the healthcare space. That's where I am. And looking at it, there is an organization that's focused on quality care. And she has a mentor, or kind of a mentor. She wants to have to be a mentor. But in the same context, at this point in time with COVID-19, schools are closed and there's nothing going on in the academic space. And this person is conflicted on whether to seek mentorship or to seek a volunteering opportunity or an internship opportunity with that organization where she can learn as she does the job and gets mentored, or seeking a mentorship without asking for the job opportunity. What would be the context on that kind of a situation? And what would be advice to such a person?
So let me get it right. The person is within the health space.
Yes.
And she has a mentor within the health space.
Yes.
And so during this COVID-19,
yes,
she is torn between going for a volunteer program within the organization where that person is, or I didn't get it from there.
So from that aspect is, she's not sure whether to ask for a structured mentorship with this person or seek an engagement opportunity in the same organization, because there's that conflict on whether she'll get the mentorship or she won't get the job opportunity. So it's whether you ask for the job instead of asking for mentorship, and in the process you get mentored under someone when you're working for them, or you just seek the mentorship and lose out on asking on the job, which might or might never happen. What would be your take?
You know, it all depends on the mode of engagement that they have at this particular time, because there are those mentorship programs that are structured within organizations.
Yes.
And you might find, like, for example, if I'm mentoring someone, I can be able to bring on board somebody. I can be able to bring on board somebody to help him or her grow and just learn some few things.
Yes.
And she could be there for maybe a period of maybe 6 or so months, and she learns what is happening within that organization as part of the practical aspect of that mentorship.
Yes.
Now, that is possible if the mode of engagement is in line with that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is different when it comes to in a scenario where somebody has a mentor, and she wants to ask for a job placement or a volunteer placement. you need to be smart also in your way because these are social relations. So as you engage with your mentor, you need to be able to have an understanding of which are the boundaries, the no-go zones. Because if you find that within the context of what you guys are doing, seeking to ask for an opportunity will lead to conflict of interest, then you need to stop it. Okay? Because perhaps what you are getting from this person, is much more than the opportunity that you would have gotten from him or her. So these are things that you need to find ways of balancing up and allow that person to make certain decisions. The other thing is that you need to be a little honest with the person with whom you are doing mentorship with.
Yeah.
Or if, for example, you are being mentored by someone and you know that you need an opportunity, tell that person that, you know what, I really, at this stage, I really wished that if I could be able to get this opportunity to help me to learn some practical skills, it will really be great. Then when you become honest with that person like that, then you will make him or her to make the decision. If it is possible, she will tell you, yes, it's possible. I think our organization usually have this kind of intakes, and I think you can come on board here. It will also make you to be around, and we can be able to, now you learn on job things. And if it is not possible, she will tell you it is not possible. So I think the honesty of engagement will be very important at that stage, so that you don't end up appearing like you are being mentored by this person, but you are getting a raw deal because your expectations are not being met. Okay? Or the other person is, the mentor is seeing that this mentee, I am giving him or her so much, but I think she needs too much that I can be able to offer, which then ends up straining the mentorship relationship.
Perfect. Thank you so much, because that is the very critical thing. For me, I felt like it's important to put your cards on the table and maintain the mentorship arrangement. But if you need a job, make it be known so that in case there's an opportunity, you get to land it. If it's not, the mentorship arrangement continues. So that is another thing that we have as well among the young people that we have a challenge with. You need a job from someone, but because you fear bringing up the discussion, you consider it a mentorship arrangement where you are not offering much, you are not learning much, but you put it just as a tentative mentorship arrangement, and that makes someone lose in the whole mentorship program. So it might be at your own disadvantage as a young person. So you need to be clear. Then we have a question on the chat.
Other thing,
yes.
The other thing, David, before you go to the other question, is that sometimes you will realize that as a mentee, you need to be a little much more proactive.
Yes.
Because you're the person who needs help. You need guidance. And if you need guidance, if you don't speak out and you make your mentor to want to always get information from you, you will lose out. So you always must be very honest and be able to be open with your mentor on anything at any given time, because it is in so doing that the mentor will always be able to know what is happening with my mentee, what is the need of my mentee at any given time, and what is it that I can be able to offer. If I cannot be able to offer this, how can we sort this out in a much easier way? So you must be very candid, and you must be very open, and you must be very honest in your engagement with the mentor.
Thank you so much for that. So as the mentee, you need to be proactive, make it be possible for the person to help you and to guide you in the process. Because without being open and sharing what you need, they might not be in a position to. So the question that was shared here, this goes to both of you, Dennis and Churchill. Thank you for the informative session. How can I help my students acquire the right skills to prepare them for the future? Probably this is a lecturer or a teacher somewhere. Mary Murage. So how can they help their students to acquire the right skills to prepare them for the future? Anyone with a response to her?
I would say that for the, of course,
I would like to comment.
Yes. Yes. Hello.
Can I go on?
Yes, you can go on. Who is that?
Hello?
Hello.
Yes, I would like to comment.
Oh, that's Alice.
Yes, can I go ahead?
Yes, you can.
Thank you so much. Thank you for thinking of the wonderful reculturing of the youth engagement.
Yes.
This is timely. A lot of discussion has been going on. I've been listening to the discussion, and Dr. Saoke has really taken us through very pertinent ideas.
Okay.
I want to focus on the tertiary institutions, the youth that we think are able enough to get engaged into economical and productive work. This means that these are the youth who are in college level,
Yes.
or are at the university and have done their maybe first degree and they are out, or they are in the university and they are still struggling with this and that, especially the situation we have now where children are at home.
Yes.
And I'm just thinking and looking at the university programs. In the university programs, there are courses like critical thinking. I picked these issues from Dr. Saoke's presentation, where he was emphasizing that the youth need to think and think critically on how they can be able to pick pieces and get on their feet and become independent. So I'm looking at critical thinking is offered at the university at tertiary level. It's a course that is almost mandatory for them. They do it. We also have other courses were like HIV, AIDS. Others are developmental studies, which touches a lot of economic issues.
Yeah.
And when we have issues like integrity, ethics and integrity,
yeah,
then automatically life skill is embedded in those particular subjects.
Mm-hmm.
So over and above, the
Yeah.
curriculum of the university, and with a lot of review, which has been done with the Commission of Universities,
Yes.
there's been a thought and a school of thought going behind that it is important that some of these life skills are integrated into these subjects.
Yeah.
So where we are, the platform where we are now,
Yeah.
we are asking ourselves, and that's where now the point you are talking about that research should inform us, is that what has gone wrong? What has gone wrong? If the curriculum is correct, today we are saying 844 is wrong, we go to competent-based. And as much as we are busy discussing the competent-based, I wonder whether we have really evaluated the difference, the parting shot between the 844 and the competent-based. And again, it takes us back. Why was 844 so overloaded? Because it was focusing on skill-based. It was focusing on the ability of a student getting out of the school curriculum or school environment and being able to pick pieces right from class 8, right from class 4 and the university. And remember, even the youth issues came in and students were really trained before getting into the university and then getting out. This was the backbone of the 844. What went wrong with 844? That now we have another name, because they're just renamings, that we now have competent-based. But over and above, we are there. We already have this term of competent-based. Now you come to the university curriculum, you find that these subjects are integrated, they are embedded. So then we have to now think, we as academicians who are in this panel, is it that we have to go back to the drawing board and do another research? Has it been done or it is not there? so that we evaluate and see these programs and these courses that are being done in the university. Do those programs have these integrated skill-based issues we are talking about? Are they there? If the teacher is handling critical thinking, you know, we have the theories, we have all those that informs them, the Platos, the Aristotles, and all that where it began, and we know the content very well.
Yeah.
But if I'm the one presenting the critical thinking in class, am I theoretical? Am I relating that critical thinking with the life situation now? How different am I from that person who is in Britain, in America, in Uganda, in China, and in Kenya? Me as a lecturer in class. How am I imparting the course to the students? How am I engaging their mind? Because remember that children grow and nobody knows anything from the moment they grow and as they turn. Because children grow, you know, early childhood to adolescent, then that is now where we start thinking. And we demand them.
That's a very critical bit, because you look at it in, do we make it be contextualized? Does it address the needs that we have? If it's not being contextualized during the training, you make it theoretical, then the whole gap is there still, because you're telling people to think critically, and you as a lecturer, you as a facilitator, you are not doing the same thing. That creates the gap, and that's why we'll end up having the name change. We're talking from 844, now we are going to the competency-based curriculum. But at the end of the day, it's the same problem over and over again. So that is where we need to make the change. So I'll go back to you, Dennis, to respond to the question that Mary asked. She's a secondary school teacher, on how to nurture students to be prepared for the future. Then after that, I'll give Paul a moment to make his comment, then we finalize on the session. Thank you.
I'm lost, but I'm back.
Okay.
I'm talking about this. Can I proceed?
Maybe we are out of time. If you can.
And that is why I'm talking. And I'm sorry to interfere, but that is why I'm talking.
Okay.
Why am I talking? I'm talking because the panelists have been talking to us.
Yeah.
And I got concerned because if we had this debate and we were supposed to talk and discuss issues that can really help us move forward, then the approach should be different. Yeah. That is, I'm sorry to say that, but that should have been taken into consideration. So where am I coming from? Now that these skills we are talking about, we have to check, are they integrated and they're not integrated? And therefore, to what we need to ask ourselves, to what extent does this university's college programs integrate these issues into the curriculum? If they're integrated, then to what extent are these issues reflected in the outcome of the university product? Because it is that product that we are talking about. If that product is not what we want, then something is wrong. And if the product is not showing any correlation, then what is wrong? Or where is the problem? Is it that...
We've lost you again. Hello? She's gone again. So Dennis, maybe you could make your comment. We wait for her to get back.
So I'm glad that the teacher is thinking about
what is wrong with the knowledge-based, then we come in with extracurricular activities. Then if we are talking about the policy.
We lost you at some point.
Yes, I'm saying Dr. Saoke covered very well the extracurricular activities that may be needed to shape up the students so that their thinking and their entrepreneurial skill comes on board. So again, we are saying that if that is not correct, and we are talking about policy, policies are there, several policies, a lot of money in the banks. Yeah. These things have been done. But then which policy is then wrong?
Yeah.
Which policy? And what is lapsing in that policy? What do we need to strengthen in this policy How do we link this policy with the government and what we see is wrong, and then we need to take it. Then now we come to the mobilization of the students then, because these students are different. Some are go-getters, they think quickly and they get into it. Some are slow, they don't even know what this project we are talking about is all about. Okay. So again, the repackaging of the youth is important. After school, yes, they sat in class, they learned those things, but then we need to think, we need to bring them on board again so that we teach them again on the rethinking of how they can start working and taking care of themselves. The today parent is a parent who has the children at home, sitting on the TV and maids working. That is the kind of children we are talking about now. Otherwise, we will go talking that they should think, they should have critical thinking, and yet in the universities and colleges is mainly remote, recall, and passing exam. So they get out there, they don't connect, they don't understand. So the responsibility again is with us who are sitting here again, so that we think, and I'm happy that Dennis, Dr. Dennis, the one in charge of the Ryculture Limited, I'm interested in working with you so that we can think and bring the youth that we mobilize together and give them a thinking of how we can bring the life skills again, so that we start repackaging again in thinking of entrepreneurship, then going through and critically going through into making them critically work even on the proposals. They wrote them in school, but practically now they don't even know how to do it. Yeah. Then the good ideas that they have, how can we connect finance and help them with the ideas that they have? So this is the backbone of youth engagement for global action and reculturing of the youth today.
Thank you so much, Alice.
I'm sorry I have interfered, but no, I kept waiting for me to be given.
You haven't interfered. You've actually spoken. You've actually emphasized a lot of things that we have said, because yes, it's about reculturing. And
yes,
and when you look at, there was a time I was teaching my students geometric optics, and I asked them in one of my exams that why do TV anchors apply powder on their faces? So that was one of the questions in the exam.
For beauty, marketing.
That is wrong. That is
entrepreneurship.
That is what they all said.
Yes.
And the answer is so that the powder absorbs light.
Yes.
The reason why I was saying that is because I train my students in class to critically think beyond the theory I give them, and to know that the theory that we are teaching them applies to the very basic things that happen in life.
Yes.
And I think that the packaging of our teaching and delivery is extremely important.
Yes.
But then there are also other structural issues that come with this, because you find, for example, if you are in a class, you are teaching a class of 300, you might not be able to deliver on a personalized level as to compared to when you are teaching a class of 30.
Yes.
Be it practical or be it theory. So those are also other systemic issues that ends up making the relationship between students and the teachers become extremely mechanical, to the extent that a teacher is only interested in finishing up his syllabus and going away, and ending up with the exams and going away. And so that reculturing, and so that's why you realize, and I agree with you, and as we also had said, that it is also, these issues exist, but then how do you, in view of these realities, how do you repackage the students? How do you repackage the young people? You must then create other mechanisms, because even if we found ways of embedding the things about ethics within our curriculum, the problem is that we will do it with a very good spirit of having them have integrity and having them have ethics and all these things. The spirit will be very good, but in the process, the institutionalization will make the whole thing become extremely mechanical, and we get back to exactly where we began. So then you realize, like, so then you realize that you then realize, and I have seen this, that you then realize that the most impactful way, therefore, in view of the existing realities, the most impactful way, therefore, you realize is that you find extra out of class mechanisms of reaching out to the students and preaching to them this gospel. It becomes extremely impactful.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, many lecturers, or these responsibilities left with the lecturers, it is, and that's why I'm looking at the correlation between the course in class and the after. Something is wrong somewhere.
Yes.
The correlation has a problem. And that is why Dr. Dennis has done very well to think and see there is a gap and how can we help. So you realize that these students need to be repackaged again, so that the art of critical thinking again and the life skills that Dr. you have talked about comes back again. Because now they are through with the year 4. They have graduated. Some find themselves just loitering. They don't even know how to go and knock and find the jobs. They don't even realize that they have the ideas. They don't realize. And their cognitive level is at a very different level. So again, we come in so that we can be able to work on their mind, bring them to the life skill, make them in a manner that they can rethink again, see themselves grow, learn from others. And the developed world has really done this very well, because students are all the time on the, leaving their homes and traveling and connecting and learning from others, which is very little with us here. Many children are really tied down in their dilapidated homes, and they don't have finance, they don't even have food, they don't even have mentors. Do you know that even going to the COOPS wall to choose even subjects, how many children are just left out there? Just because they don't know how. Ignorance. They're left out, and the government has money, but they just don't know even how to do it. But the decision makers have already said that after students have done Form 4, they are put in the central placement system, and they just believe it is automatic. How many children are left out, even to join the TVET? And they're just getting wasted at home.
This is where
So
now
you see,
thank you so much, Alice. And this is where I feel like it's a systemic problem, it's a structural problem, because even when you look at it from what Churchill is talking about, you talk about integrity. And when this student leaves the class where you've offered the lecture in theoretical form, integrity is a thing of the past in the society where we live in. So we have to integrate even in issues on critical thinking. Do we solve problems in our society? You mentioned something, Alice, in terms of a child that sits and watches the TV, and the nanny is taking care of every other thing in the house. A maid will be cooking for them. It's a matter of letting these people be hands-on. And it starts from us as members of the society acknowledging that there's something that needs to be done. We let our guards down and start doing the work that needs to be done. And once it's being done, we are making a step forward. And that is very, very critical. Because unless we acknowledge it and take it up as our responsibility, it will be something that we just talk about in different forums. We just talk about it and move on. We leave it for other people to act on it. Yet it is our responsibility. It affects our very own environment, our own livelihoods. And if we don't act on it, we'll be nurturing a generation that is failed, and that is where we need to move forward. So I think
that is correct.
Yeah. Mary Murage had
so
the
thank
question.
You so much.
Karibu sana.
Thank you so much, yes.
Yeah. So maybe you could respond to how do we nurture these young people so that they could be prepared for the future world? I think that has been answered in terms of the response that Churchill gave and even the input that came from Alice, unless you have something else to add on it. Dennis, you have anything? Or Churchill?
I think that one we have spoken about. Okay, go ahead.
Derek?
I just wanted to say that yes, the focus is in school, the focus is on the university and the programs, but remember these children come from home. And as long as parents still leave children idling around, not knowing okay, when they reach age 20, 21, they believe they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of conflict between the children and their parents, but mentorship is required. So I think we are losing it also from there. The parent we have today is a busy parent who is going out there to work and has not given maybe these children any direction. And if they know, then where are they? When you come to the university, Dr. Saoke mentioned very well, you find they are in year 1, year 2, idling. Basically, their heads have not even thought of what they're supposed to do after class. Busy with on their phones. What are they busy with their phones on?
Yeah.
You can see the culture.
That
Still idleness, doing nothing, and that kind of a thing. Thinking that when they reach year 4 is when now life begins, they start working hard to look for jobs. Too late.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So those are some of the things.
So there's something again we need to do with the parents.
Dennis, you had something, then we give Paul a chance before we close up the session, because we are already 17 minutes behind time.
Okay, just a final comment.
Yeah.
For the teacher who wanted to impact the students, I really like that initiative. But you realize that to be impactful, you have to go beyond the curriculum as a teacher. You're basically a pioneer in the field of what the student needs at the high school level. So you can divide it into sections of a high school level, at the campus level, post-campus, and what are their needs at that particular level. You'll have to engage with the students, and you'll have to engage with other teachers who are peers and even counselors, so that you realize what are the needs and how can they be tailored. Basically, to do anything good, it takes effort, it takes research for you to be effective. So it is not as simple as going to YouTube and Googling a certain video and spewing it out to the students that these are the soft skills that you require. You need to see if they are relevant to the situation that you're in that school, and that means being a pioneer in that field. So that's a closing remark that it is a very good initiative, but it will need a lot of dedication, a lot of planning, and maybe coming up with your own curriculum that is apart from the 844 or even the competency-based curriculum, so that you can help the students in life beyond the classroom.
Thank you so much for that, Dennis. So Mary, as it's done, it's on you to... Yes?
The other thing about that is, and it goes with what Dennis has said, is as a teacher, you really have to find ways of making your subject interesting to your students. Remember, we are coming from a case where some of these students do not even know why they are doing some of these courses. Actually, given a chance, they would want to go do music rather than be in class. So you got to motivate them, you got to inspire them, and tell them the reason why this is the best course that you ever chose, and why you are the best person to get the best idea out of this course. So your mode of delivery should be that which entices the student to find interest and deepen their interest in that course to the extent of wanting to know more. So that when your time for class comes, they can't look forward for it. It is in doing that that you begin to find, you begin to influence your student so much so that you are able to steer his life to the direction that you think is good for him or her. And in doing so, you can then therefore be able to make him to get the skills that you think is right for him. So I think that mode of the delivery is something that a teacher must really begin to think of. And thinking of it, he must know that his job is just beyond going to teach to be paid or to finish up his coursework. It is about delivering to get the best product out of the student.
Perfect. Thank you so much. As a teacher, you are more than a vessel of delivery of that information. You have an extra responsibility rather than just carrying the information to the students. And when you do that, that's far much better. And it nurtures the students to be better individuals. You guide them along the process, and that makes sense. So Paul, I'll give you 2 minutes, please. Yes,
Thank
Paul.
you very much. I believe that it has been a great eye-opener for many of us. And as a public policy scholar and also a teacher before, I would like to make the following submission that I believe that teachers have a responsibility in terms of culture and also role modeling in terms of what they do and what they preach. Because it's one of the major issues in terms of when you try to compare how our education system in Kenya and other parts of the world, there is that aspect of say and what we do. Basically, what I mean is that, for example, when you teach people about integrity and honesty, how we expect we say the youth should do this and do that, while we, maybe as lecturers and teachers, we don't do the same. So it is a big issue for us to be teachers, to become role models, and also to try as much as possible to tell whatever we are trying to impact or make the youth to have, they can also practice it. Then the last aspect is about research. I believe our universities, the major challenge which we are having in our country in terms of even different policies, in terms of even different aspects of our socio-economic or even political spheres, it's a lack of research. Because currently, even if you have an issue which is facing, whether it is youth, persons' abilities, women, there is no substantive research which is coming up from our universities. And this makes that difference between our universities and other countries in the world. And that aspect of, if we had research, for example, if, for example, we talk of a particular issue, like the way you've asked why maybe TVs anchor, they apply this and this and that. Real concrete information why it is being done, because it cannot just be just for beauty purposes. Maybe it is marketing, we are not sure. But if there is a particular research which has been done to establish such things, or the impact of these behaviors which are coming up, or such a thing can really help the society to understand minimal informed choices, and it can also impact the youth. And once the youth are also trained to have these skills of research, they can impact well in terms of what they can be able to achieve in their future life or be able to work well. Thank you very much. And I believe these are an opportunity for us to rethink or also reshape the different aspects on how we can really recapture in terms of the all aspect or spheres of life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. That was quite insightful. And I believe we have a role to play. So I'll give our panelists the last moment to give their submissions as we end up the session. I'll start with you, Dennis.
Okay, so the final words, I'm really grateful that we had this discussion, and I believe that it has helped to open up our minds, to shape our thinking. Everyone has learned something new, and that is the reason why we congregate as people, so that we can exchange ideas. And when we exchange ideas, we come up with something new, something better that is more suited to the problems that we are facing. So I hope we can actually go and think further about this, and not just think about them, but think about how we can implement. Dr. Saoke has said that not only from the top, but also at the bottom. At your home, how can you start implementing this culture of thinking, of innovation, of entrepreneurship? At school, how can this be implemented? And even at university level. And I hope this conversation keeps going.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that submission, Ray. Churchill, back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much also for having me into this conversation. I just want to clarify that the reason why I had put in the continuous assessment exam for my students on why anchors. It was a geometric optics class. So the thing had nothing to do with questioning the character of the anchors. It was about testing their critical understanding of the subject. Because the reason why anchors put powder on their faces is, other than beauty, the main reason is for it to absorb the light, so that when the people who are watching you do not see too much reflection from your face. So it was purely on the basis of testing their critical thinking. So just my final remark is that I really hope that the future belongs to young people, and the young people have capacity to change the world. And I hope that through some of the what we have discussed here, somebody somewhere can be able to know that the world needs their skill, the world needs their creativity and their minds, and they need just to press themselves into a corner and put themselves into the most get out of the comfort zone and get to rediscover themselves and show what they can be able to offer into the world, and look at themselves from the concept of from what I said, the concept of leadership. What is it that you want to provide to the world? What is it that you want the world to remember you for? Begin as early as of now. And I can tell you that sometimes it is your technical skills or even your core skills that might take you to the table of men. I can assure you that the first time I met the president was not because I was able to mobilize a rally. It was because I was able to make a technology that drew men into in an agricultural show that made the president to come and see what people are interested in. Who knows? Maybe that is what could make you to sit on the table of kings. Just your skills that you have, the technical or core skills. So never underestimate the power of what your hands can do. Never underestimate what your inner self could be able to provide to the world.
Thank you so much. Never underestimate what your skills can, where your skills can take you and what your skills can do to the world. That is the final word from Churchill. And I believe from these discussions, we are all gaining insight, we are learning, and we are realizing that the common narrative that we've all over-accepted and made to be part of us is not the case. We have a role to change that narrative. And that is why as Ryculture, we are keen on redefining that culture. It has been a norm, but it doesn't make it true. It has been a norm, it doesn't make it be the thing that we have to accept and live with it as it is. It was created by some other people. It's now time for me and you to take up responsibility and make that change start with us. And that is very important. So for now, thank you so much, Churchill and Dennis, for joining in as panelists for this session on youth and employment. It's been a pleasure learning from you, from the diverse contributions from Mary Murage, the questions, Paul for the contribution, Anika Alice for the passionate discussion that you've brought into the whole chat that we have, and for everyone for being part of the movement. If you are not here, it wouldn't have happened, but you've made it happen. Those who are following on Facebook Live, thank you so much for being part of this, and I believe we are going to apply this. So this marks the end of this discussion. On Friday, 4 to 5:30 again, we'll be having another session, and that will be the last of the three-part series of discussions, where we'll be looking at youth responsive policies and governance. What place does the youth have in terms of policy issues on governance, and how are we taking up those responsibilities, or we are pushing it to other people to make those decisions? And if we are pushing it to other people, are we contributing to the whole discussion? Do we give insights on what really needs to happen? If that's not the case, we'll have lost it. But it's the right time for us to start having this sober discussion, for us to be part of that movement, and for us to create a change. Asanteni sana, and see you on Friday.